So just a few disclaimers before we begin. That this isn't a private conversation. One day it will be made available to the public. We hope that it's a fun experience for all of us. But if there is at any time something that I ask that you don't want to talk about, just let me know. Or if you need to take a break, just let us know. And my role is to ask a couple questions, but really to talk as little as possible and let you talk.
Kind of lead me in.
Exactly, and lead you along as well. So I'll be looking down at my notes, but I'm absolutely listening. So for the formal introduction, today is Friday, March the 13th, 2015. My name is Andy Reisinger, and I'm here interviewing Charles Stevens.
Charles
H. Stevens at his home in Decatur for Georgia State University's Department of Special Collections and Archives Gender and Sexuality Oral History Project. And before getting into the meat of the interview, if I can just get your verbal confirmation that you're aware that we're recording you.
Okay. Am I looking at you or at the camera?
At me.
Okay.
So let's just start at the beginning. Can you tell me a bit about when and where you were born?
Well, my parents and grandparents settled in central Pennsylvania. And my father went to college in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is between Philadelphia and Harrisburg, southeastern Pennsylvania. And he brought mother there, they got married there, raised us 4 children. I have two brothers and a sister. I'm the baby. I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on June the 11th, 1927. That makes me 87 now. Let's see here. I do need my glasses. Oh, when I was 5.5 years old, my father was caught sexually abusing a minor and was told to go to jail or leave town. And he left town. About 6 months later, I did see him once, and never again the rest of my life. And I was never told about him, the complete story, until I was at least 18 years old. My family, my mother, they all kept me from this incident. My older brother gave me my first job. I was 12 years old. And it was a job selling newspapers in a big hospital in Lancaster. I used to go through them. I was selling papers to patients and employees. And I did that until I was 17, when I joined the Navy in 1945, right at the end of VE Day. I was signed up just before and went into active duty right after VE Day. My first sexual activity happened at the hospital. This was during World War II, when the blackout sirens would ring out I would race on my bicycle 6 blocks to the hospital because that's where the action was. And there was a patient in there, a male patient, for ulcers. And he must have been there perhaps a month altogether. And during that time, he became so friendly with me that during some of these blackout times, I'd end up in his room and we would masturbate each other. And then when he was discharged, I went and visited him in his parents' attic apartment. And that sort of went on the same way, self-masturbation, until one time he tried to pull me down on him, suck his penis, and that frightened me, so I left and never went back again. I learned maybe a few months later that he had been caught with another minor and sent to jail. That's the end of that incident. 1945 to 1947, I was in the Navy and was sent to China with the occupation forces on a hospital ship. I was a hospital corpsman. And it was the main hospital facilities until land facilities could be set up with the Chinese. I never did trust the Chinese. They would smile at you in their face and hold a knife behind their back. It probably was because of the war. They didn't trust anybody. Then I was discharged and called back in because I belonged to the reserves for the Korean War also. But this time I stayed stateside. And that's when I started the education part of it, after I got out. And I jumped around an awful lot. I jumped from pre-med to political science, to political theological, and finally to interior design. 5.5 years of schooling and no degree. But anyway, my major employment during my lifetime was working for a fabric manufacturer by the name of Scalamandre, S-C-A-L-A-M-A-N-D-R-E. Mr. Scalamandre, Italian, was kicked out of Italy because he opposed openly Mussolini back in 1924, came to the United States. He had the rare talent of an engineer's mind. He had a doctor's degree in engineering before he left Italy. And he had the aesthetic design ability of creating design and colorations and so forth. And so he started the business with another lady here and finally ended up owning his own business. His wife was Italian descent but was born in the United States. They had 2 children. Gino, the oldest, went to MIT. He got his father's engineering mind. And Adriana, the daughter, a little of the a little of the design rubbed off, but not too much. So, being in a gay-friendly industry, I found it very easy to be gay during most of my life. Scalamandre's let me attend a lot of the national designer conventions all over the United States. And I was a good friend of Papa Franco. I spoke of him because so many of his employees were yes people. That's what he liked to hear. And if I disagreed with him, I gave him a reason. So it was kind of self-respect, self-congratulation for each other. And so he was good to me. The firm was located in New York City, and within 3 months of going to work for them in April 1955, this Southern Territory became available, whereby I traveled calling on interior designers, architects, and high-end department stores, trying to sell our samples. And it ended up being 2 trips a year, each one lasting about 100 days. At the little 10-week periods in between, I was fortunate enough to sublet somebody's apartment while I was in New York, so I didn't have to pay for rent year-round. And I've lived in a Coldwater Flats all the way to the Essex House during that time period. And mainly really through a lot of the designers that came into the New York showroom, I became friendly with them. They were going on a holiday to Europe or whatever, so I lived in lots of grand places also. In 1958, I finally asked permission to move out into the territory, and I chose Atlanta, and so I moved here in 1958. Been here ever since. I've had 3 lovers during my lifetime. The first one was after the Korean War. I settled in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and went to work for Carlton department store. It was sort of the richest of Pittsburgh. And there's where I met my first lover. He was one of the interior designers there. He had a domineering mother who would never permitted the 2 of us living together in Pittsburgh, so he found a job with a contemporary furniture store in Erie, Pennsylvania, which I called the Siberia of Pennsylvania. And we moved up there, and he set up a design department. And that lasted, maybe 2.5 years. We would go on buying trips to New York City for the store, and on one of those trips to New York in early 1955, he dumped me with one of his friends up there. But I was fortunate enough to get the job with Sexuality within 3 weeks' time. And so there started my career. The second, his name was Don. He was a big city boy from Pittsburgh, and he kept running back to Pittsburgh to see his friends and leave me up there with no one. And it just finally broke up. The second person was Arthur. He was an interior designer from Austin, Texas. We met at one of these national decorator conferences in Boston and got a divorce in Acapulco 7 months later. So that was just a quickie. The third one, which I'll get into more later, was Bill Muha. Bill was from Dayton, Ohio, and we met one weekend. He came back the next weekend and stayed 38 years until he died in November 2005. His talents were that he was a decorator's decorator. they would come to him with problems to solve. And so he was doing work for everybody in the area. I guess his own client were the owners of the Ritz Carlton Hotel here in Atlanta. In fact, they owned 11 of the Ritz Carltons. And they had a home here, one in Lawrenceville, one in Lake Burton, one in Shelbyville, Tennessee, where they owned 50 of those walking horses. And some of those were valued at $1 million apiece. Then they bought an island over in the Bahamas, and Bill went over and helped them with that until the owner developed a heart disease, and they felt that was a little too far from civilization to, so they got rid of that. They had a home in Naples, Florida, and that's when they opened the Ritz Carlton down there. And but that was his biggest client he ever had. Let's see. I'm not bringing any questions from you.
I'm letting you go through that, and then we'll get back to some specific points.
Stop a minute. I think I got some more paperwork over here. Date of birth, siblings. I didn't have any pets as a child, but during my lifetime I've had 3 dogs. My favorite dog was a Sheltie. One lived 16 years, and the great-granddaughter lived 12 years. I spent a lot of, do you know what the Decorative Arts Center is? ADAC in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It's a home furnishing center for the professionals. There are probably over 100 showrooms there. And I spent a lot of 42 years in and out of that center. I opened Scalavandri's showroom there. I opened Stark Carpet showroom. 3 or 4 different showrooms in that complex. In fact, I just recently conducted a memorial service for a friend that I've known for 60 years here in Atlanta. And 15 years ago, he and his partner moved up to Highlands, Ohio, and he retired from decorating. He died on the 7th of February this year. They had the religious service up there. And he actually lived more of his life in Atlanta, and so I thought we should do something here. So ADAC let me use their presentation room, and we had a celebration of his life last Tuesday, in which I guess about 75 people came. And so it was a very successful event. I paid the entire bill for the catering part of it. And then some of those people come around and go to the catering company and paid the bill for me, and they reimbursed me. That just astounded me.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was a successful thing.
What was his name?
His name was Stephen W. Ackerman Jr. His father and his grandfather both went to West Point. I think they were both graduates. Steve, being gay, just fought his father. He didn't want to go. He finally agreed to go for 1 year. So in his obituary it says that he did go to West Point. one of my jobs and responsibilities was that I was an officer in his company, Tickner Interiors. Ben Tickner was an old decorator that worked for the first interior design firm here in Atlanta, W.E. Brown Decorating Company. Started in 1914. Ben, I don't know when Ben went to work for them, but in 1927, he went to Jacksonville, Florida, and opened a branch. Then came the crash, and that closed down. But he met his future wife, Virginia, even though Ben was gay also. Just goes with the profession, I guess. And Steve went to work for Ben. Ben became ill, died, and Virginia made him president, owner of Tickner Interiors. So that's the firm that Steve eventually, and I was involved with him in that firm also, until we just closed it down, well, 15 years ago when he moved to Highlands. Let's see. All my favorite restaurants, whether that means anything. The Colonnade goes first, Rock's second, Cafe Lily here in downtown, and Babette's Cafe. My most enjoyable trip was to France. I have another friend that I've known for 60 years from Memphis. He and his lover and Bill, my 38-year, became very close friends, and we visited back and forth many times. The older person, the two of them, there was 15 years difference between them, and also Bill and I, he was 15 years younger than I was. Kenneth Kimbrell, the older one, died. It's been 15 years now. So Bobby and I took up and traveled. They had traveled all over Europe many times. And it was several trips to Europe with Bobby that I thoroughly enjoyed. I guess the most unusual life fact that I brought out was Scalamandri made a lot of the fabrics for the public rooms of the White House. The brocades, the satins, and that sort of thing. And after one of these renovations during the Kennedy administration, Mrs. Kennedy invited some of the employees from the mill to come down and see the end results of their weavings and printings and so forth. And I, by that time, was living in Atlanta. I drove to Washington. And one Saturday morning, before it was open to the public, we were allowed in to wander through the main floor of the White House. And at that time, Mrs. Kennedy came and greeted us. So that's one of the highlights of my life, having met her. Best personal characteristic, I said optimism, because that was it. The most admired characteristic in others, honesty. And my favorite pastime was assisting agencies for the aging, because that's the direction I was going. My best midnight snack, pound cake and milk. My greatest fear is snakes. My favorite movie was the Titanic. My greatest love, at this time I did this was done about 2-3 years ago. My greatest love was all of them. Mm-hmm. Greatest achievement, doing for others. Favorite tradition, dining with friends. That goes back to the early days when I moved to Atlanta in 1958. there were very few gay bars. Mrs. P's is the one I guess was one of the earliest ones. She ran a restaurant in the Ponce Hotel near where the Sears building was on Ponce Avenue. And she extended to a bar at night. And it became a hangout for the gays. She ran a tight ship when she could. But the reason she got involved with this, her husband was ill and she did this to pay for his medical bills. How do I see the future for me? Very bright. Well, that was 2 years ago. That was before. I've been diagnosed with cancer of the belly, emphysema, and that little, what I call a trapdoor that doesn't work for me anymore. So I have to eat smaller meals and eat more often, and I still can't gain weight. I'm down to 118 pounds now. And I'm just skeleton up here. But I'm surviving, I guess. My favorite book was Unbroken by Laura Hildenbrand. That was the Air Force man who whose plane went down in the Pacific. It was 42 days out in the Pacific, was picked up by the Japanese and was in prison. They just made a movie of it. It was a fantastic. My favorite food is fish and seafood. And my greatest extravagance was spending money. Now, where was I? What else do you want to know?
Oh, a whole lot of things, but you've given us lots of things to follow up on. Let's go back to your early childhood.
Okay.
Where was it? You said that your father had gone to college in Lancaster,
Yeah.
and that he brought your mother along. Can you talk about how they met? And
I don't know much about that.
Mm.
Of course, they met before I was born, but my oldest brother was born in 1990, and I was born in 1927. So like kind of 2-year periods there where we were all born. When my father left home, I guess my oldest brother sort of became my father. My mother had to go to work, and with this newspaper business, I was able to buy a Schwinn bicycle. I found the invoice for it the other day. I'm trying to get rid of my rat packet. Paid $44 for it in installments. But that bicycle took me lots of places. I used to get out on the highway. Of course, there wasn't many cars then either. Ride my bicycle all the way to 36 miles to Harrisburg. And one summer day, I rode my bicycle 114 miles to Rockwood Beach, where some neighborhood friends had a cottage for the summer. The father liked the beach, and the mother of liked the mountains, and we had the pine forest there at the beach, so it was a compromise. We put the bicycle on the roof of the car to come back.
Where in Lancaster did you grow up? Did you move around the city?
Yeah, we probably lived in 5 different houses during my lifetime. 2nd Street, New Street, Pine Street, North Queen Street. That was an apartment. All the others were houses. This was an apartment over a business, a storage company business. And my mother's father lived with us. In fact, I think my father went through his money before he left. Because when his wife died, he traveled around the world, went all the way to China and India, never married again. And he came to live with his daughter, my mother. And he died at the age of 92. About 1939, I guess, somewhere like that.
What had he done for a living?
The only thing I could figure out that he was a gentleman farmer up in central Pennsylvania. That he hired out the land to tenants because he apparently had money, and he gradually went through, or my father gradually went through all of it. In fact, my sister, not too long ago, she's got dementia in a nursing home up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So we talk about the things that happened years and years ago. And I only found out from her that when I was 4 years old, I don't know where my father was then, because he hadn't left yet, she and I were put in an orphanage for upwards to a year. And I don't remember that part of my life.
And what sort of work did your mother do when your father had to leave?
I guess she took any kind of job she could. I remember one time she was a house mother at one of the fraternities there at Franklin Marshall College. She worked in the public school library. I don't know anything about her education. I'm sure she didn't have a degree in anything. And her mother died when her mother was only 30 years old. So pretty much, I guess there was a great aunt, a maid great aunt that raised my mother. I did learn from my oldest brother that my father died at the age of 86, had a partner down in Miami. That's all I know. I kind of shied away from your questions because I didn't sort of like the approach. But if you want to pull some of this out, please do.
Yeah, and I have... Are those the questions that I typically use?
No, this is just the packet questions.
Okay. Yeah, you can put that to the side, and if you're okay, we'll work from some of my questions. And if you don't find any of those interesting, just let me know.
All right.
But to follow up quickly, you just mentioned that when your father died in Miami, that he had a partner.
Uh-huh.
And the language of partner, was it a woman or a man?
No, it was a male.
Okay. Do you have any further thoughts on that?
No.
No.
As I traveled for Sexuality down through there, through one of my clients' Presbyterian church, I sent money to him anonymously. And I guess I did this selfishly, thinking if he ever found out I was gay, that I'd end up having to look after him the rest of his life. That was a jealous decision on my part.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't look back on it now.
Can we talk a bit about your schooling and your youth? You gave us some little vignettes of the bicycle and the newspaper route. So tell me where you went to school. And
my first semester in college was pre-med.
well, before we even get there, can we go back to your primary schooling as well?
Oh, that was very exciting. Having the newspaper business kind of alienated me from my classmates because I delivered the papers morning and evening, so I wasn't interacting with my friends at school. I had to leave right away and get on my bicycle, and the papers would be delivered to me from the newspaper building, and then I would use a wheelchair to push the papers around through the corridors, and got to know many wonderful people that way too. I almost became, this maybe is a strong statement, almost like the mascot of the hospital. You know, being involved with it 5 years, they allowed me most anywhere in the hospital. I saw my first delivery when I was 14 years old. Now, I wasn't supposed to, legally be there.
Which newspaper was it, and which hospital as well?
The newspaper was called the Lancaster Intelligencer, was the morning paper, and the Lancaster New Era was the evening paper, and the Sunday was Joy. The hospital was a Catholic hospital with maybe 200 beds, so it was a big hospital. Yeah, the nuns even tried to convert me. But in a nice way. I grew up as a Presbyterian.
I was going to say, did you have much of a religious upbringing?
Yeah, I joined the church, I guess, before I was a teenager, I guess, somewhere around here. I've got my baptism certificate. I stayed as a member of that church even after moving to Atlanta to support it financially as long as my mother was a member. And then one day I got a letter from the treasurer suggesting that since I don't come to church anymore, maybe I ought to go find another church down where I live. And that insulted me so that I just stopped here.
What were some of the activities that you liked to do as a youth?
Well, my life revolved around school and and the hospital. And my bicycle. I go everywhere with my bicycle. I don't remember much of that. It wasn't until, well, let's start with my third lover, Bill Muha at UHA. Jerry Pear was also a local native who was going to Ringling School in Sarasota studying interior design. And as a result of that, he met a lot of the snowbirds that came down from the north every season, every winter. And his father at the age of 48 had a heart attack and died. And Jerry could not afford to continue in school as a result. He came to me looking for a job, and I got him the job. And it developed a friendship that's lasted all this lifetime. Jerry saw me with Scalamandry traveling the territory and selling samples, and he got involved in the same business. And he was one of the major tenants at ADAC. He sort of let's see how, oh, I know. Jerry earned enough money to go back to school. In fact, he took a year off from work and went to New York to Parsons School of Design and got his degree through NYU up there. Then came back to Atlanta and really got involved as a manufacturer's rep like I was doing. He still kept his contact with a lot of the snowbirds. And one March, when they were doing their caravan back to Ohio, Jerry invited him to stop over with us over the weekend. And Carl Martin was one of the snowbirds. He was manager of the Kettering Country Club in Dayton, Ohio, which was sort of the driving club of Dayton. And he flew Bill down to Atlanta to help him drive the rest of the way back to Dayton. So that's how I met Bill. And he went on back home and came back a week later and never left. But anyway, that brings Jerry into the picture and how I met Bill. Let's see, where do we go from there? Oh, there was another very talented interior designer here in Atlanta by the name of David Richmond Byers III. Born and raised in Baltimore, went to the University of Virginia Architectural School, and then ended up working for the W.E. Brown Decorating Company that Ben Tigner at one time worked for. David was a personal friend of Mr. Conger, who was the curator of the White House during the Kennedy, and that was his connection with Mrs. Kennedy. And during that time, the W. Brown Decorating Company here in Atlanta made most of the draperies and upholstery for the public rooms on the main floor. The East Room, the Gold Room, the Dining Room, the Blue Room, so forth, the Red Room. And it was through David's connection with Mr. Conger that those things were made in W. Brown's workroom right here in Atlanta. And Mr. Norman Penley, the president of W. Brown at that time, took all the credit for it. David got no credit, but he was a very talented person. He had a house on Juniper Street between 7th and 8th, and he loved candles and parties in June. Well, one night he forgot to put all the candles out when they went out for a late dinner and the house burned down. Next, David bought a house on 26th Street, just off Peachtree Road. And he filled it with stuff. He was a collector of newspapers, articles, books, everything. He rented out the second floor apartment to a couple gay boys, but he could barely get into his own apartment. So he bought the house down across the street, started the same thing with him. Across the street one time, he got hit with an automobile and never really did completely recover. He never learned to drive, so he would depend on friends and taxis. But he would come to ADAC in his stocking feet and a walker, going from showroom to showroom, looking for fabrics for customers, that sort of thing. Well, he finally developed cancer and finally had to have somebody live in with him, look after him. And one day they were in a red Cadillac convertible on the way to a dental appointment. And the driver looked over at David and saw that David had stopped breathing. So I guess they must have had cell phones. And anyway, he communicated with the bookkeeper. And the bookkeeper said, well, I'll cancel the dental appointment, just take David to the emergency room to Piedmont Hospital. So David went out and smiled. He did a lot of restoration work down in Savannah, the governor's mansion here, some of the old houses up in Dewburn, North Carolina. So I always felt that David was never given full credit for his talents. But I think somewhere along the way, he wanted to know what organizations I belonged to. Well, right now, I'm a member, I think it's 14. 7 of them are gay, and I'm not active in all of them by any means. One of them is called the Atlanta Prime Timers. It's an organization, gay men, generally more senior men. I was president of that organization for 3 years, maybe 2008, 9, 10, somewhere along there. And I volunteer every Saturday morning at the Botanical Gardens for 4 hours. I'm a greeter. I greet people coming into the garden. And if I sense an accent, I usually ask them where they're from. And on any Saturday morning, I can greet people from as many as 7 to 15 different countries. The Chamber of Commerce or somebody does a bang-up job of selling the gardens to the world. Mm-hmm. Always somebody from China. They got lots of money for their...
Let's go back to you told us a little bit about your first sexual experience with the man in the hospital. Yeah. Can you talk a bit about your sexual coming of age? And
I never really came out until I was 25. I kept running away from it. I didn't know why. I was attracted to people when I was in the service, but nothing ever happened. Oh yes, there was one incident in boot camp. We were indoctrinated with films, and the room was dark. We were back 3 or 4 rows in the front, and a half a dozen or more of us pulled out our penises to jack each other off. It was just simply a platonic thing. Mm-hmm. But that's the only thing that I remember that happened.
Do you remember how that came about? Whether one person...
Obviously one person started. And I wasn't on the end, I was in the middle somewhere. But as I say, I was attracted to men, but if anybody approached me, I would run away. And it wasn't till my first lover really brought me out that I gave in to it.
And how did your coming out sort of unfold with your friends, with your family, colleagues?
Oh, we never talked about it to my family. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago that I and my sister talk about it openly. I feel that my mother embedded the hatred of men into her mind, that she never did marry. Now both she and I believe that she really wasn't a lesbian, and yet she had 3 or 4 close friends, the so-called weren't lesbian either, but were friendly, and none of them ever married. But that we talk very openly about with my sister now, because those are the things that she can relate to. I try to call her every night, and they seem to be giving her sleeping pill earlier and earlier, and so I don't always get through to her every night. I've started calling her earlier, but she's very happy there. They take them on little day trips. They start, I guess she arrived there near Christmas time, and they would take them out on rides at night so they see the lights. But about once a week they take them out on little outings in the area. She really enjoys that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a nephew and his wife who look after her up there. The nephew looked after his father and was power attorney for his father, my brother, until he died at the age of 95. And so the wife, Randy is her name, R-A-N-D-E-E, took over the responsibility of Ellie, and they don't get along. They just don't, they butt heads. Ellie wants Rick to take over now that his father's died. But he said it's too late to do that now. She's an ex-alcoholic, and doesn't really have the patience with Ellie. So sometimes I have to be the go-between down here.
You mentioned that your mom maybe instilled a hatred or hostility towards men. How were you and possibly your sister here educated in sexual matters, relationships, if at all, from your family? But also you mentioned seeing a delivery in the hospital, and then the indoctrination in the military with some sort of sexual content. Can you elaborate on that?
I think I did all that I can remember about it. To bring up any particulars. I knew I was attracted to Ben. As I look back now, when we went out on Liberty, I look back now and think that probably some of those people that I was friendly with were gay. And just nobody ever went any further.
Do you recall what the message was in this film that you were watching in the military?
I don't. I have no inkling of it. It was some sort of a training film. I guess growing up in the hospital with this business, I automatically volunteered and went to the hospital corps. Now, to be crude, if I may, you can delete if you want to.
Mm-mm.
Well, hospital corpsmen were nicknamed penis machinists and pecker checkers.
I guess that was a big part of your job.
Well, but you know, back during the wartime, I was given a lot more privileges than certainly a nurse attendant is today. I was given shots and all kinds of medications, and during the Korean War, they stationed me at the Philadelphia Naval Hospital, which is a skyscraper of a building in South Philly, right near Veterans Field, where the Army and Navy games played each year, and where the greatest show on earth was. Much of it was filmed because the circus was there for a full week, and I saw a couple of those performances with the live actors. I can remember Cornell Wilde, Jimmy Stewart. I can't remember the women's names. Oh well. And so the Korean War was almost like a holiday for me, because I put myself on night duty in the officers' sick quarters. And here again were unmarried nurses who weren't gay, and yet they were friendly with us. Of course, I didn't know I was gay then either. But we got off duty an hour before they did. And we'd go to our quarters and change clothes. And they would slip by our quarters, and we'd get their automobiles and hide below the guard. And we'd go down to Ship's Bottom, a little beach near Atlantic City, and lay on the sun all day. Then they'd slip us back in again. So during the Korean War, I don't know, I had friends that were married and had children. They went off, got killed, and I didn't. That I could never understand. But I basically have had a happy life. I've been optimistic. I enjoy helping others. And until recently, till my physical disabilities are catching up with me, I guess I've decided to go ahead with you people. The first person I did this with was, I'll think of it before we're over. He left Atlanta and went up to Virginia Polytech.
Yeah, Wesley Chenault.
Wesley,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
We know Wesley very well. I think I've probably read the interview that he did with you 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about your military service. When you were discharged and finished your reserve duty, you said you went to college for 5.5 years. Where were you at with that?
I started out at Franklin Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, pre-med. In the very first semester, I realized I was taking 2 heavy courses. And I went to the chemistry professor and asked permission to drop it. He forgot to notify administration, and I got a failing mark. Well, that just killed any chance to go on to medicine. So I switched to political science, maybe for a semester or so. And during that time, I went to work for a Veterans Administration hospital in Pittsburgh. That's how I got to Pittsburgh. And met one of those Christian Coalition people. And that's what swung me over to pre-SEAL. And I, after a year working with the Veterans Administration, I wrote them a resignation letter saying I hope I never had to depend on the federal government again for a job, with all the politicking that went on and so forth. There I was working in surgery then. In fact, the same doctors that I'd been in the service with at the Philadelphia Naval Hospital ended up there. So then I went to Grove City College, which is the only college in the United States that is completely independent, will not accept any money at all from any agency of the federal government. They're that well endowed. No, I did all this before Korea, because that's the thing that saved me from Christ. Excuse me. I didn't mean that. Saved me from going further. Was that I was called back for the Korea War. Ooh, I got my timing mixed up there. So when I came out, I went to back to Pittsburgh and got a job at Carlton's department store and started their decorator training. And they sent me to classes at University of Pittsburgh, Mellon Institute, and Carnegie. I took merchandising classes in all those while I was there. And that's when Don Strachan found me and hauled me off to Erie, Pennsylvania.
And then you moved to Atlanta in 1958?
Yeah.
Where did you move to physically in Atlanta?
88 Ellis Street, which is downtown Atlanta, just 2 blocks from Davison's back then. And the rescue mission was halfway up the street. And there was a walking policeman walking the beat. I was in a little garden apartment in the basement of a red Victorian house. And every now and then, one of the winos would climb over the wall into my little garden. I'd just call the police and they'd come take them away. The second house I rented a whole house, 2218 Peachtree Road near Biscayne Drive, between Peachtree Creek and the Piedmont Hospital, one of those level areas. And I converted the first floor to a showroom with fabrics, and I lived on the second floor. In 1965, I did the big jump, and I bought a house on West Paces Ferry Road. 6 houses from the governor's mansion. I paid $42,000 for it, and Scalamander here again came forth and lent me money for the mortgage. And I was making such good money with them, I paid it off within 8 years. So, that's when I really started entertaining in a big way. Every Saturday after Thanksgiving, I used to have a party and invite gays, straights, personal friends, business friends, all together. I sent out invitations, and we would have 450 people come. We had police, we had catered, we had police controlling the traffic. And I did that, I guess, for about 8 years, until 1978. The traffic got so bad I couldn't get in and out of my street. It was a 1930s house that badly needed the plumbing changed. When I was there, I put in 2 different air conditioning heating systems, redid the floors. It was 80 feet from one end of the house to the other, across an alcove, dining room, entrance hall, across the living room, into a solaria, into a greenhouse. Bill, with his talent, created a greenhouse out of the screen porch. He always left the house in better condition than when we bought it, with his talent. We moved to the poor end of Mount Barron Road, was the next house. Long Island Drive, near Roswell Road. And we stayed there until 1985, when we bought a cluster house on DeForest Ferry Road, just about 2 blocks north of Collier Road. And that we stayed there until 1994, when we made the big mistake of our life. We moved to Lilburn, Georgia, 16 miles east. But we kept looking. The reason we decided to move, there was a little drive behind our driveway with a lot of heavy truck traffic going down the hill to businesses that didn't exist when we first moved there. Plus our taxes jumped sky high. And I guess that was it. Well, we got a 4-sided brick house with a 4,400 square feet and a 2-car garage with entrance on the side, not facing, and a boat door on the other side of the house with its own driveway down. And it's a 3-story house. Paid $135,000 for it. Well, we stayed there until Bill died. But our friends wouldn't come out and see us that far out. So that was the big mistake. We were in a rut living out there. Dan Pruitt, Don Gambrell, 2 gay boys whose mother lived out in Norcross in a house. And they used to go out every weekend and look after her. Then she died, and they spent every other weekend, or all the other weekends, and just keeping up with the yard and the house and so forth. That's when we became friendly, when they would come out on weekends. We would always eat together and became friendly that way. His mother died, and then they sold the house. Dan had been pretty thrifty with his money, he lived at 1421 Peachtree Street at Persian Point, and also owned another one that he rented out. So he had two houses, plus his mother's house. And he was able to sell all three of them and pay for cash for one on Chantilly Drive off Sheraton Road. Near Executive Park, between Executive Park and Cheshire Bridge Road, in that area. And here again, Bill, with his talents, made all the draperies for that house for them and did other things for them at that house. And when Bill became ill with cancer of the lungs, Dan and Don stepped in again, and on weekends they would bring meals from the Colonnade, one of his favorite restaurants. Bill got tired of eating my meatloaf and mashed potatoes early on in our relationship, and he took over the kitchen and became a gourmet cook. So when he died, I was just lost. Even today, I eat TV dinners or go out to eat. Anyway, he became the executor of our estates, and he now looks after me. He calls me every couple of days, and he goes to all my major doctor appointments. And today I dropped my cell phone, and when I put it back together, it wouldn't work, so I went over to the Verizon store on Toco Hills, and they got it working right away. And I said, now push 5. He's my speed dial number. And he said, it's working. I said, fine. So I closed up. Well, it was 1 minute before he was calling me. Well, no, if I needed something, I didn't bother letting him. But, so that's Dan. He's a great guy, but when he drinks gin, he gets belligerent. That's all. I don't know how much more I have to live. It could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, I don't know. But my cancer is moving more rapidly. And the doctor tells me the reason I'm losing weight is because the nutrients are feeding the cancer. And it's nothing but just a skeleton up here. And I'm at the point now where I take a half a pain pill at night. Otherwise, once I lay down, this bothers me. But that basically is the only pill I'm taking for. I'm with Kaiser Permanente and have been for 18 years. In fact, my doctor, my primary physician, I started the same month, and he died 4 months ago of cancer. So I'm without him. Anyway, Kaiser has set me up with a division called palliative care, PALLATIVE.
Palliative care?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
it. And they're a whole round table of specialists sat me down one day with Dan, and we talked about my life. And I decided then that I didn't want to go through chemotherapy. It can be worse than anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. So I meet with them about once a month. And they may call me once or twice in between, see how I'm doing. So that's where I am.
Well, it sounds in a lot of your prime years, you had quite an active social life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Can we explore a little more of that? You
Well,
mentioned that you hosted an annual party.
Yeah, every
Were
year.
parties and dinners?
I got people come from 12 different states. You know, people that I knew working for Scalavandri and going to their national conferences every year, different cities. I got to know people all over the United States. Yeah, I have lots of friends, if they haven't died already. Oh, I used to hand sign it and hand address 600 Christmas cards every year. What I'd do on the road in the fall, I'd take my cards with me and do it between appointments. Let's see, the organizations I belong to. I'm currently members of the following organization: the Atlanta Primetimers, SAGE, AVER, American Veterans for Equal Rights. I'm a life member of that organization. That's the organization that fought for Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Atlanta Preservation Center. Right now they just started the Phoenix Flies. Just started this week. Georgia Equality, AARP, and AARP Foundation, both of them. Human Rights Campaign, Atlanta History Center, High Museum, the American Legion, World War II National Museum down in New Orleans, National Trust for Historic Preservation, Smithsonian, Atlanta Botanical Gardens, the Audubon Society, Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, Open Hand, the National LGBT Task Force, met here a couple of years ago. Doctors Without Borders, the Gay Division. I've got a Martin Rees card, a Barnes & Noble card, and Siemens warranty card for my hearing aid. Well, it's here somewhere. So that's it. Now, I'm not active in all of them by any means, as you know. But, oh, 1958, when I moved to Atlanta, my first employee was a black girl by the name of Catherine Ponder. She had been a day worker for one of my decorator customers. And he released her to me so she could work 5 days a week for me. She hated Martin Luther King and his crowd. She said they used to come and bang on her apartment door all hours of the night demanding money for his cause. So she had no time for him. My second employee was Russell Adams. He and a twin brother, Robert, and an older sister, Tish, all three were gay in the family. And Russell's father was in the maritime seaman and only came home a couple times a year. his mother was batty, I thought. He used to go to his mother's house, pick her up before coming to work, and locking her into his apartment for the day because she could out wander the street and get lost. Well, Tish brought one of her lovers home one time, and the mother realized what the story was and kicked her out. So Tish and her new lover went to San Francisco, as did probably 24 of my friends from here migrated out there. I don't think I'm not in contact with any of them anymore. So many of them died. Yeah, as I said, I was not much into bars when I came to Atlanta. They were all too noisy. I couldn't stand the noise. And Mrs. P's. Oh, there was also Stevenson's on Peachtree Road near Wisteria Gardens restaurant. This was near the Piedmont Hospital, but across the street, a little closer, Brookhaven, or Brookwoods area. Steve Ackerman, the one who just died, and his partner Chuck, lived on the parallel street behind Peachtree, Montrose Drive. The back of their house looked into the back of Stevenson's restaurant, which was one of the short-lived gay bars. And they used to watch the sexual activity off their balcony in the backyard of Stevenson's.
What years would this have been?
Let's see. Probably the 80s. There was also a lesbian in our life, Marilyn Besserly, was with Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati or Dayton, anyway up there. And when she moved to Atlanta to work for Coke in research and development, she was told to look up Bill. And so she did, and we became friendly. She brought with her a Molly Goldberg kind of a person, a gal with great big grapefruit breasts. And Molly just loved to have Bill and I play with her breasts. Well, Marilyn got rid of Molly and sent her back to Ohio. And met Jeanette Taylor, who had been working for Coke for a long, long time. I guess there was at least 15, 20 years difference in their age. Jeanette Taylor we call JT. JT did the buying and the purchasing for all of Coke's in-town dining rooms and executive, both the employees' cafeterias and all that. She did all the purchasing for Coke for that. And they lived together until JT died maybe about 3 years ago. But Marilyn and JT were close friends of ours. They moved down to Florida for a while when Marilyn's parents retired and moved down there from Charlotte, North Carolina. And when they both died, they then moved to North Carolina, to a little Presbyterian town, in which they passed themselves off as aunt and niece in this street. See? Well, it was just too quiet a town for Marilyn and JT. So they moved back here to Atlanta, and I guess JT only lived a few weeks after they got back here. But now I still stay in contact with Marilyn. She lives up in Cummins. She has a brother who is a builder who has 3 children, I think. So she's got that family there. I guess that's all I have.
How would you say that you came to know most of the people that...
Oh, through my profession.
Mm.
Decorating. Even, decorators, customers, that sort of thing. The full gamut. Mrs. Edith Hills is another prominent local interior designer. She came from Savannah and worked for a prominent design firm of Porter and Porter, Mr. and Mrs. Porter. At first she was just a maid. Then she learned gift wrapping and those kind of things. She ended up being the head decorator once Mr. Porter died. And while she was on a trip to New York, buying trip, Mrs. Porter sold the business. He just comes back Friday from her trip and be told this. He just gathered up her things and left and never went back. But she called me that weekend, wanted to know if I would help her, fabric-wise, And she went around her house and put a price tag on everything on her house. She and Mr. Scalamandri were, I guess, good friends professionally. In fact, I learned from her that he had a mistress here in Atlanta that I never knew, but she told me after he had died. Bill did a lot of things for her, creating things. She got so old and so blind, nobody could drive her straight stick Ford car, and her eyes got so bad that if Bill or I were riding with her, she wouldn't let us drive the car. We'd have to tell her when to turn from red to green before she would go forward. It was frightening riding with her. She finally had a heart attack, paralyzed half of her body, in a nursing home. I used to go see her practically every weekend. And she'd plead with me, Charles, did you bring me some poison pills this week? She said, I just don't know how much longer I can bear this. Her mind was sharp. She could turn the pages of the book, but she had to be helped to get to the toilet. She finally did die. Her house was at 317 Lindbergh Drive, about half a mile east of Peachtree Road. She paid $20,000 for it back about 1924, and her estate sold it for $394,000. She did all the wealthy people's homes here in Atlanta. Not all, but certainly a lot of them. She did the Masters Clubhouse in Augusta. She had her daughter was Edith Kugler, who until she suddenly died of a heart attack or stroke, was society editor for the Atlanta Constitution. Where were we? Is that the end?
Not quite. I have a couple
Sure,
things
go ahead.
if you're still willing.
Sure.
You talked a little bit about the employee that worked with you.
Russell Adams. And,
The woman.
Woman. Catherine Ponder.
Yes, Catherine. How did in your social and professional world, how did race figure?
Well, since I was born up north, and probably only 1 or 2% of were even foreigners in my little town. Even the college didn't back then bring many people who were foreigners. So I never had any prejudice. No. It may be in an individual, but no, not race.
But then you moved to Atlanta in 1958.
It still didn't bother me.
But not you.
I was aware of it, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, not you, but to
Yeah.
move
Yeah.
into this.
Yeah.
Did that figure in a way with your...
Well, I do know that the gay bars were segregated.
Mrs.
Sorry.
P's and...
Yeah, I don't remember black people coming there. I believe the whites would have chased them out. I don't remember the integrating of the blacks. They had some of their own out in the West End. That's funny that you should ask that question. I don't think it really bothered me.
Did you ever go out to the West End?
A Jewish customer took me out there one time and never again. In fact, that Jewish decorator friend helped a couple of these HIV positive people die.
While we're there, how did HIV and AIDS come into
I guess
your
I
life?
must have been in my world, a world of my own, because I escaped back to my profession and living on the road and being happy that way. As I look back, I know that a lot of my friends died. There's another, have you ever heard of the Apollo Club in your interview?
Mm-hmm.
Mace Phillips was president of that for most of the time. And I was also about 1973, 75, somewhere along there. But you know about it, so I don't need to describe it.
Tell us.
Oh, okay. Well, it was started by maybe a half a dozen gay men before drinking on Sunday was permitted. Bill Copeland owned the Prince George restaurant on 6th Street, just east of Peachtree, and the gay bar at the other end of it at Juniper and 6th. Tried to think of that the other day and couldn't. Anyway, there was a big party room in between, and he allowed us to use that room to periodically gather together, bring your own bottle, potluck sort of thing, and have gatherings. I believe there were Sunday afternoons that we did this. And the Apollo Club then developed into also a travel club. And Bill and I went to Acapulco 2 or 3 times. Went to Hawaii once. We did Labor Day weekend train rides to Washington. drank and sang all night. Some of them even went all the way to Spain or Portugal and Toronto. We didn't go on those trips, but it was a very lively group. Somewhere along the line, 74, I was on the board. I was next in line to probably be president, take over for Mace. And Bill Buell came to me and said, I'm an alcoholic and I need help. And I up and resigned, not only from the board, but from the club, to look after him. Well, you know, he just enabled me to enable him. And he continued to drink until he became ill with cancer of the lungs. So that was the end of me and the Apollo Club. I did it for him. Now, where were we?
Well, was that when you left Apollo, was that a real cut in your other social life and going out as well?
Yeah, a lot of it was, yeah. And that's when I probably lost contact with a lot of those, well, would have been the 80s, when I started losing friends to HIV positive, and yet not realizing it until they were gone. Just like the race relations. I was in my own world. The Vietnam War came and went, and I don't relate to it. I didn't have any friends that were in it. I was busy in my own life. I guess because the nation was united for it, that I never bothered to be involved one way or the other. You're bringing out some thoughts in me I hadn't had before.
I hope that's okay.
Sure. You're going to have to edit 3/4 of this to get it good out of it.
Did the advent of HIV, did it impact anything in your sexual life, sexual practices?
No. I was true to Bill that whole time. I found out later, a few friends after he died, they had little flings with people. But that pleased me. It already happened and was gone. Who was I going to find? Oh, Bill's up there in that ginger jar.
Okay.
It's lovely.
He owned a houseboat on Lake Altoona for about 7 years. And we entertained a lot on that too. So he says when he dies, he wants my ashes and his thrown into Lake Altoona. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. Dan Pruitt knows about that. I could also go up to that national cemetery up north of Cummins, the new National Veterans Cemetery.
To circle back around on the subject of race, we mentioned a little bit of you moving here and not having a huge impact. What about professionally? Did race figure and gender? You mentioned a lot of the decorating was sort of a gay man's world,
but it wasn't a black man's world. It wasn't a black man. I was trying to think since we were here, did I even have a black customer? I may have had some Cuban exiles that were dark skinned down the Miami area. But they didn't leave any impact on me, one way or the other.
And coming up on a few last questions, and anything else you'd like to talk about. Have your ideas about sex and sexuality changed over the course of your life?
Oh, I love sex. I did until my condition now. I can't have an orgasm. I want to.
Mm.
And I have an occasional gay man who has a partner. When that partner is busy playing tennis, swimming, book club, he'll slip by. And he tries his hardest to get me. And it just doesn't work anymore. Sure, I'd love to have sex.
And what about your thoughts of sex and sexuality, being
Well,
gay? Has that changed since you were 25?
Oh, of course,
came
yeah.
out? And how so?
Well, I want people, whether they're gay or straight, to have sex and to enjoy it. I think one of these questions, if I find it. Oh, here it is. What's perfect happiness? Having an orgasm. I skipped over that one.
I'm glad we got round to it,
Yeah.
though.
No, I would. Right now, I'm ashamed of my body, and so I guess to that extent, I'm unhappy that I can't have sex, or don't want people to see my awful body now.
Mm.
I wish I had a partner or friend of some kind. My upstairs neighbor is gay, and until 8 weeks ago, he said I insulted one of his tricks, and he won't have anything to do with me. So, but until that time, he was somebody I could call on if I needed.
Mm.
And Dan Pruitt was depending on him for that. But he won't give me the time of day now, so eventually he'll get over it. He's a country boy from Claxton, Georgia, where the fruitcake's made.
Mm-hmm.
And only his family are the landowners down there. And his father died about 3 years ago and left all this land to his mother, his sister, and him. And he has much of it rented out to tenant farmers. So he has to go back home frequently and pick up there. But basically, the mother's running the farm with one or two people help. It's like 700 acres, although she in her own little confine only has maybe 30 or 40 acres, right where she is, where they built their family house and that sort of thing. I hope you'll come around one of these days. But I do wish I had somebody that doesn't not sexually, but just a close friend like he has been. And I assume he'll outgrow it one of these days.
So it sounds that you've been very partner focused most of your adult life.
Know, there are people at Prime Timers, they've got over 200 members now. And there are a couple of them that run after me. And I don't feel comfortable with them. I've had sex with only 2 of them.
And in your years before Bill, you were true to him for those
all those years,
30 odd years. What about prior to him? How was your
Oh,
sex life?
I guess I was sexually active. Yeah. When I lived in New York City, those 10 weeks between trips, yeah, I was seeing a couple different decorators. I was seeing a Canadian waiter in one of the uptown, upscale restaurants. Once I moved out here, yeah, I was sexually active with various people, but no real lover. You know, I want you, but I don't want you for. I don't know.
If it's not too prying and you're comfortable with it, what types of sex have you enjoyed in your life the most?
Oh, 69 and sucking, not fucking. Bill wanted to do fucking when he first came here because that was he was accustomed to with his previous partner. And it turned me off. And I never got involved with fucking until the last 2 or 3 years. And then I'm not really comfortable with it. I'm trying to please the other person.
Right.
Sure. I've got even a strange phenomenon that's happened to me. My penis, I've been circumcised, but my skin is growing longer, or else my penis is shrinking. And yet when I have a whole erection, it's all there. But when it's soft, the foreskin covers my penis now, and I can't figure out why. I've talked to my doctor about it. He says not natural.
Unlikely.
Now, is there anything else you don't know about me?
What would you say over the course of your life in the gay world? What do you like about most and least about gay life and culture?
Oh. I guess the camaraderie, being with people that I feel comfortable with. What I dislike, I guess the obvious thing. Feminines, the feminines don't appeal to me, but I don't openly reject them. I mean, if they're part of the group, they're part of the group. I guess the camaraderie. Saturdays, once a month. The first Saturday of every month is when the prime timers meet. And I worked my 4 hours at the Botanical Gardens until 1 o'clock, rush home, grab a sandwich, and get down to the Rush Center by 3. And I enjoyed being with the group. And then they all go to Mick's bar at Ansley Square and then on to Rocks for dinner. Well, Don Pruitt won't let me drive at night anymore.
Mm.
It's probably just as well. Because a couple of weeks ago I was taking somebody home over Northside Drive, and that's because his car broke down. And I had to go pick him up and take him after dark. Coming back home, there's a little side street that connects Clifton Road with North Decatur Road. North Decatur High School's on that. There's a new bridge connecting the Children's Hospital with, I guess, more of the Children's Hospital. Anyway, the lights are so bright there that I couldn't differentiate between the curb and the street. And I hit my front corner. I haven't told Don this one. But I was able to get it home without the tire going flat. But I took it to my independent dealer, and he said I bent the frame. So, anyway, I'm not admitting that this back-end collision, hoping they'll take care of it all. I don't know. Anyway, I was believing that this is going to be my last automobile. But maybe it didn't. I don't know. The Armory was the gay bar at the other end of Prince George, the party room. I knew it would come to me.
Yes.
That's where the Armorettes got started. In the early days, the thing to do here in Atlanta was dress up in coat and tie and go to somebody's house for dinner. That's how we entertained ourselves. And going to the bar was out-of-town decorators coming into town. They wanted to see the scene. And that's more than anything else that got me to the bars.
I almost forgot to ask. Billy Jones was a decorator as well, yes?
Yeah, I knew Billy, but only in crossing. I mean, we acknowledged each other, yeah. Yeah, he used to decorate the Simon's department store at North Avenue on Peachtree. And people would go by, watch him at the windows, watch him do the decorations. Yeah. Phyllis Stellar was his actor's name.
Did you go to many of the shows?
I remember when I first moved to Atlanta, there was a house on Juniper where 20, 30, 40 of us used to gather in some basement and watch drag. And we all smoked, and the smoke just, but I don't remember much more about it than just that the smoke was so bad. And the ceiling was so low in this basement. I have no idea who took me there or why, but I only went there once.
Did you frequent any of the establishments out on Cheshire Bridge over the years?
No, they didn't exist that long ago. I mean, the Heretic and what else is along there?
I was thinking back to the earlier with the Sweet Gumhead.
Oh, Sweet Gumhead. At the Apollo Club, we were guests one night there. And there was some rumpus around me. And I tried to break up the rumpus. And one of the managers, floor walkers, whatever, picked me up and threw me out. Picked up the wrong person, of course. Once he realized what he'd done, they come running out the parking lot, pleading with me to come back, and I don't think I went back that night. Mace Phillips, we were the board members of the Polo Club. And I believe that was one and only time I was ever in the Sweet Gumhead.
Mm.
Gosh, I forgot that. Pick another one. As I said, most of the time when I was at the bars, or Bill and I were out to the bar, it was visiting friends or visiting customers that wanted to go see the scene. Now, Bill, when I'd be out traveling on the road, he and David Byers, the Jewish gay man that took me out to the black thing, he and Bill used to go dancing lots of nights together. They were dance partners.
Mm.
And that didn't bother me at all.
It seems you're quite well traveled through your professional life and personally as well.
Only in the United States, and through Kenneth Kimbrough and Bobby Bedford, my decorator friends in Memphis. Kenneth is now dead. Bobby and I did several trips to Europe. We did the river cruises up the Danube River, and Paris, and the Seine River down to the English coast, or down to the English Channel. And of course, he and Kenneth have been around the world 2 or 3 times. And I introduced some of them to each other through these national conferences. And, they made lifelong friends with a lot of it. And Bobby Bedford, I just went to Memphis for his 95th birthday. I think Kenneth's been dead about 15 years now. Still lives in the same house. Bobby was on his way through Atlanta to England, to the Ritz bar in London, to kind of reminisce where he and Kenneth and Rick met back in during World War II. He stopped over in Atlanta, and I introduced him to Tom Bohn, B-O-H-N. Tom was then 48, 49 years old. And though Tom had a current lover here in Atlanta, Bud Heist, who owned a nursery out in Conyers, Bud had developed Alzheimer's, and Tom was looking after Bud. But Tom also lived with an ex-lover who today is 92 years old. Tom, even though Bud Heist was still living with his Alzheimer's, Tom kind of put Bobby Bedford in the back of his mind for the next one. Well, Bud died, and Tom went after Bobby immediately. So when they were together almost 3 years, Bobby says to me, Bobby's in love with me too. You know, these affairs are supposed to last about 3 years, Charles. He said, I'm coming up a couple months on 3 years. Do you think it's over now or what? But anyway, they've been together 5.5 years now. And Tom has moved to Memphis to look after Bobby. And Bobby's going to give him the house as a result. It's a 1949 contemporary glass and redwood house. Way out east of Memphis itself. And I don't think anybody would want the house. None of their friends, anyway. It's too far out in the boondocks. So Tom takes care of the house and Bobby. And as Bobby said, if I didn't have Tom to look after me, I'd have to be paying somebody. And though I'm paying him to some extent, this is it. Well, Tom comes back to Atlanta about every 5 weeks to visit the 92-year-old Bert. They just came in last night. He'll be here for 5 or 6 days and then go back to Bobby.
Is there an age difference between Tom and Bobby?
Oh, well, Bobby's 95 and Burton is 92. And Tom is now about 52 or 53. He likes old men.
Mm-hmm.
He's already had about 4 die on him. He lived out in California for 12 years and had some die on him out there. Since he's been here, he's had some of them die on him. It's nice to have somebody that likes old men.
Absolutely. Seems he's playing a very vital role.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So with your travels all around, and particularly this insight you have through the world of decorating, do you have any observations about gay life and culture regionally around the country, like how things have been here in the South, and then your time in New York or out on the West Coast or the Midwest?
Yeah, there is a different trend. You know, the Southwest is adobe kind of mission furniture almost, whereas here it's very refined, but it's gradually changing. In fact, a whole new young generation of designers today are thinking a lot more contemporary. I walk through the Decorative Arts Center, ADAC, and it's all contemporary. There may be one or two that are transitional, but for the most part, it's all contemporary. And though I used to subscribe to all those magazines, I don't anymore. In fact, Steve Ackerman, who just died, I brought 40 years of Architectural Digest down from Highlands and donated them to Georgia State University, Interior Design Department. And Veranda and Southern Accents haven't been in existence that long. But those from the beginning I also gave to Georgia State University.
And with that regional variation that seems to be diminishing,
it's become a melding pot
in design. What about in gay culture?
Oh, well, it's still there, but it's certainly more open than it ever was. particularly with all this marriage business going on. Gay people are out more everywhere. I don't see anything going back into the closet unless this recent bill that just passed this week. I wonder why, if I wasn't so, had my roots here by now, I would up and move to a gayer friendly state to live. But it's too late for me to do that. How Atlanta can be so openly liberal and the rest of the state so backward. I don't understand it. And yet there are few Republicans in the primetime organization. Not many, but a few. Of course, they're delighted with what's going on.
And what do you think about the current moment? Sort of nationally, not
Well,
here in Atlanta, but also you said
Nationally, I think within 5 years or less, that the nation will go for marriage all over. There may be a couple of diehards, but I think the courts will take care of them. But how? Well, I think the reason we created the unconstitutional ban, we forced it too fast. We should have done the partnership thing first and done it more gradually instead of forcing. That created the rebellion.
mm,
And we never got it back.
and if you're right that within 5 years
The nation will be dead.
that nationally marriage is the law of the land, marriage equality.
Yeah, the Supreme Court will have to take care of it. It won't be the Congress.
And where to then, do you think?
Well, I'll be dead then, so I'm not going to worry.
You never know.
Yeah, you're right. Never know. I thought I'd be dead by now.
Well, we've covered lots and lots of ground.
Lots of nothing.
Well, I suppose if that's the case, then I'm interested in a lot of nothing. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with that we haven't talked about?
Well, I basically have been a happy person. And I've been an optimistic person. I guess now I'm going to slip a little away from that optimistic, knowing where I am physically. But I still have to go on. Dan's thinking about having somebody like Open Hand bring me meals so I eat more nutritional food.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to wait until they go on a cruise and come back at the end of the month. I have had 2 surgeries. Can't think of what the first one was. Oh, I know. They took a growth the size of an orange out of my belly. That was the cancer. They thought they got it all. 6 months later, the double checkup, they found out, oh, we missed a piece or two. That's what's growing and expanding down there. So then I have a little pocket at the back end of my mouth here at the beginning of my throat. It catches the food. Well, they slid open the bottom of it so the food could slide on through. But it's grown back now, but I've adjusted. In fact, it would be bad for me to have surgery with this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I've adjusted my eating. Eat smaller meals and eat more often. And I think Dan's going to wait until they come back from their cruise to start the food thing.
Well, that sounds like that will be helpful and a
Yeah.
good development.
And I eat out 2 or 3 times a week. Usually twice at the colonnade.
Mm-hmm.
And Paula, the woman that owns Babbat's, is thinking about giving up. Not because business isn't good. She's wearing out.
Mm. Well, I certainly appreciate you spending these several hours with us. This has been quite a treat.
My God, the afternoon's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well.
Well, unless you have anything else to add now, I think we'll wrap. But if you think of anything in coming days, we can add it as a written addendum, or I'd be
Okay.
happy to come back out, talk some more.
Well, with these organizations, hey there. For 5 years now, I've been in the lead vehicle at the Pride Parade. And that reason is my World War II status. I and Jack Strauss, who was in the Battle of Bulge, I think that's where it was. Anyway, the two of us are in the lead vehicles. Right, Jack was the one who pulled me into that. And that's quite a humiliating, humbling experience. I find myself tears in my eyes before it's over.
Mm.
Those hundreds of thousands of people shouting at you, and it's overwhelming. And with prime timers, I started them having a booth in the park. Now it's a regular thing. Aver can't seem to get its act together about a booth in the park. They don't have enough members and enough money to do anything. They depend on the national organization.
Mm.
And yet Danny Ingram was the national president for 5 years. He just gave it up. It is now national treasurer. You don't know Danny?
Mm.
He might be somebody to interview, because he was kicked out of the service for being gay. And that's when, for 17 years, he fought the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And he proudly shows a picture of him shaking Obama's hand the day they signed it into law. He had a lover, a dozen years or more, who just left him 2 years ago. And Danny is such a strong person that I think he was trying to run the boy's life also. I don't know what their age difference, if there was any age difference. I don't even remember whether I ever met the lover. So Dan's been in a readjustment period right now, and finally has got himself one of the board members of AVER nationally he's become attached to.
Mm. Well, we'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. This
It's
has
going to
been
take you 200 hours to edit it.
no editing, just transcribing.